this point, you may have heard of Parasite, a Korean movie that's been nominated for not Best Foreign Language Film, but straight up Best Picture. What is this movie? And why does everybody love it so much? Today at The Binger, we're going to be explaining what happened at the end of Parasite and why that ending is so interesting. But be warned, what follows is pretty much all spoilers. The end of Parasite is complex, with multiple stabbings, a man in a basement who spells out Morse code messages with his head, and more. To understand the end of Parasite, first we'll need to quickly explain what happens in the rest of the movie, and the context in which the movie was made. First of all, Parasite is directed by Bong Joon-Ho. Who is that, you might ask? Although you may not recognize the name at first, you've definitely heard of his movies. The Host from 2006 was arguably the first film in the recent wave of political pop horror movies that include Get Out and Midsummer. But Bong, as he's known to a lot of the English-speaking world, really broke out with the release of Snowpiercer. Part of the reason for the movie's success was that it starred Captain America, also known as Chris Evans. But while it may have been nice to have that big-name box office draw, the movie was so much more than just a Chris Evans action flick. No offense to the Captain Americas and Fantastic Fours of the world. Except for Silver Surfer. Maybe a little disrespect to Silver Surfer. Snowpiercer is about a post-apocalyptic world where most of humanity has been wiped out by extreme cold. The people who are left are housed on a train called Snowpiercer that runs around the world, piercing through deposits of ice and snow wherever it goes. The movie is about class structure. The poor people move in the very back of the train, and as you move further up, the richer the people get. The lives of those at the very front are made possible by the people at the back. It's all controlled very tightly by the owner of the train, Wilford. His spokesperson, played by Tilda Swinton, sums up the attitude of the people controlling the train by saying, "We must occupy our preordained position." Bong made one more movie after that called Okja, an epic buddy comedy about a multinational food corporation, and then he made Parasite. That line from Snowpiercer, "We must occupy our preordained position," is what Parasite is all about. It starts off with a Kim family. There's the mom, Chung-suk, the dad, Kai-taek, and the daughter and son, Ki-jung and Ki-woo. They live in a half-basement and are struggling to make ends meet. But then Ki-woo's friend does two things for them. One, he gives them a scholar's rock, which will supposedly bring them prosperity. And two, since he's going to study abroad, he offers Ki-woo to take over his tutoring job. Although he's skeptical at first, Ki-woo accepts, forges a university degree with the help of his sister, and shows up at the avant-garde mansion of his new clients, the Parks. He expertly fakes his way into the new job, and after chatting for a while with the mother of the kid he's tutoring, he has an idea. The rich family employs a driver, a maid, and tutors for both their kids. That's one job per member of his family. It's an ambitious plan, and very complicated to pull off. But after some careful scheming, it works out. They convince the rich family that their maid has tuberculosis and that their driver is getting busy in the back of their Merc. Soon the whole Kim family is working undercover, as if they'd never met for the Parks. So far so good, right? They've all found work and they're sticking it to the rich folks who have no idea what's going on. Well, kinda. When the Parks go away on a camping trip for their son's birthday, the Kims decide to spend a night partying in the vacant mansion. In the middle of the drunken fun, who should show up but the old maid Moon-gwang. She claims to have left something in the basement, which turns out to be her husband hiding in a secret bunker. The reason he's down there is because of debt. Desperate for cash, he went to some loan sharks. He hadn't been able to pay them back, and so he hid in the bunker ever since. Having discovered that the Kims are faking not knowing each other, the bunker husband and Moon-gwang try to leverage them into helping them out, delivering food to the husband while he continues to hide out in the basement. But it devolves into a fight that leads to the husband being bound and gagged and Moon-gwang getting kicked down the stairs and hitting her head. And to make matters worse, just as all this is happening, the Parks call to say that because of a rainstorm, they're coming home from their camping trip. They'll be back in 10 minutes, and they ask Chung-suk if she can cook up a snack for them to eat upon their return. The Kims go on a cleaning frenzy, brushing all the snacks and booze into garbage bags and hiding under the coffee table in the living room. But unfortunately, Da-song, the son in the Park family, can't let go of the camping idea, so he sets up his replica teepee in the yard. The kid is obsessed with a cowboys and Indians version of North American indigenous culture. His parents come down to the living room to keep watch on him all night. The Kims, lying only feet away under the coffee table, can hear everything they say. And so it's very hard for them to stay still when they hear Mr. Park say to his wife, "Where's that smell coming from?" She doesn't understand, and he explains that it's Mr. Kim's smell. That smell that wafts through the car. An old man's smell, she asks. No, he says, it's like the smell when you boil a rag. This had already come up earlier in the film, when Da-song had noticed that the Kims, undercover as tutor, art teacher, maid, and driver, all smelled the same. At home later that night, the Kims realize that it's the smell of their half-basement apartment. In other words, the smell of poverty. This is the dynamic from which the rest of the tensions in the movie blossom. There are the rich Parks, and then there are the aspirational Kims who are trying their best to get ahead, even impersonating the Parks for a night, but end up getting pitted against Moon Gwang and her husband. Instead of teaming up, the two low-income families fight it out amongst each other as the rich Parks glide along unaware of the people living in their basement and the people hiding under their coffee table. A tidy literal representation of the term underclass. Eventually, the Kims escape and run through the rain to their apartment, which it turns out is now flooded. Father, son, and daughter rush to grab whatever belongings they can as the sewer water rises to the ceiling. Ki-woo quickly snatches up the Prosperity Stone and they make it to a shelter in a high school gym. The next morning, completely unaffected by the storm, Mrs. Park decides to throw a party for Da-song's birthday. In order to make up for the camping trip gone wrong, she calls all the Kims and asks them to come, making it clear that although it's a party, she'll pay them their usual rates. Kai-taek goes along with her on her rounds to pick up wine and hors d'oeuvres, and as he's driving her home, he hears her in the back seat, speaking on the phone with her friend. "Today, the sky's so blue and there's no pollution," she says. "Thanks to all the rain yesterday. We traded camping for a garden party, lemons into lemonade." The situation for Kai-taek is much more serious than lemons, lemonade, or a garden party. He's lost his home. To add insult to injury, as Mrs. Park continues to chatter away, she smells something foul and puts her finger up to her nose to block it. It's the smell of the sewage water he was submerged in the night before. And then comes the party itself. The most explosive scene of the whole movie. We'll give a rundown of what happens and then dissect what exactly it means. As Ki-woo, upstairs in Da-hai's room, takes the Prosperity Stone out of his duffel bag, his dad is in the yard, hiding in the bushes with Mr. Park. Both of them wear cartoonish versions of the American indigenous headdresses, and Mr. Park explains his plan. They will pretend to attack Ki-jung, who will be bringing out the cake only to be stopped by Da-song. The good Indian will jump out and save Ki-jung and everyone will cheer. Mr. Kim looks unenthusiastic, and so Mr. Park uses the one piece of leverage he knows he will always have. "You're getting paid extra," he says. "Think of this as part of your work, okay?" Ki-jung tries to bring food down to the bunker to make amends, but she's intercepted by Mrs. Park, who explains that she wants her to be the one holding the cake, because she's been helping Da-song work through his trauma of seeing a ghost by teaching him art. At this point in the movie, it's become clear that the ghost was actually the guy in the basement sneaking up for some food. Anyway, she goes outside and Ki-woo goes down into the basement with the rock, but he messes up and the basement husband catches him, thwacking him in the head twice with the rock, a striking image. He's literally being bludgeoned by the fantasy of prosperity. The bunker man then continues upstairs, grabbing a knife from the kitchen and emerging into the sunlight, where he runs at Ki-jung, who's holding the cake, and stabs her in front of all the guests. Da-song, standing behind her, faints. Mr. Park runs for his son, and Mr. Kim runs for his daughter, while Mrs. Kim grapples with the basement dweller. She eventually gets him with a barbecue skewer, and he falls on top of the keys to Mr. Park's Mercedes. Then, as Mr. Park rolls over the body to grab the keys, he smells the stench of a person who's been in a basement for years. Mr. Kim sees it, and he snaps, getting up, grabbing the knife, and stabbing Mr. Park in the chest. He runs away and then disappears. Ki-jung passes away. The family moves out of the house and Mrs. Kim and Ki-woo return to their half-basement apartment. But then, one night, Ki-woo goes back to the mansion to look at it, and he sees something familiar. The front hall light blinking on and off in Morse code. It's a message from his dad, who goes back every single night and blinks out the same words to his son, in the hopes that one day he'll see it. Once he manages to decode the Morse code message, Ki-woo goes home and writes a letter of his own, telling his father that he has made a plan. One day, he'll make enough money to buy the house for himself. And when he does, his father will finally be set free. But until that fateful day, Mr. Kim will be communicating to absolutely no one every single night in Morse code. And the remaining Kims will be in their half-basement trying to make ends meet. Do you think it's hopeful, or will Ki-woo be able to make his way up in the world? Even if he does one person making it out even matter? Please let us know what you think about Parasite in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to The Binger for more content like this in your inbox. Thanks so much for watching.